You know that feeling when something shifts deep inside you? When you realize you are not the same person who used to absorb everyone's pain without saying a single word? You are not just sensitive anymore. You are not just kind anymore. Carl Jung discovered something about people like you, and he called it dangerous. But dangerous in the best possible way. You are becoming something that manipulative people fear most. This is not about losing your innocence or heart. This is about gaining power. Real power that comes from finally trusting yourself completely and fully. Let me tell you something society does not want you to know. They need you weak. For years, you believed that being harmless was the same thing as being virtuous. But Jung saw through this lie completely. He said that a person who is harmless is not good. They are just incapable. Real virtue comes from being capable of destruction, but choosing peace instead. That is the difference. That is what separates the powerless from the powerful. Think about it. Society teaches empaths to be doormats and calls it compassion. They want someone who will not fight back, someone who will absorb abuse and call it understanding, someone who will carry everyone's emotional garbage without complaint. And for a long time, that was you. You made excuses for people who hurt you. You blamed yourself when relationships fell apart. You apologized for existing. But here is what they never told you. Your sensitivity was never a weakness. It was a weapon you had not learned to wield yet. And the moment you learn to wield it consciously, you become psychologically untouchable. Jung spent decades studying this exact transformation. He documented what happens when empaths stop apologizing and start trusting their own perceptions completely. What he discovered terrified him, but not for the reasons you might think. He was not afraid these people would become cruel or heartless. He was afraid of how powerful they became when they stopped doubting themselves at every turn. The lie of harmlessness runs deep in our culture. From the time you were a child, people praised you for being nice, for not making waves, for keeping the peace. They rewarded you with approval every time you sacrificed your own needs to make others comfortable. They trained you like a dog to associate your worth with how much you could tolerate. But let's be clear about what harmlessness really means. It means you cannot protect yourself. It means you have no teeth, no claws, no capacity to defend your own boundaries, and predators can smell that a mile away. They are attracted to harmless people because harmless people are easy targets. They will never respect you. They will use you until there is nothing left. Jung understood something most people refuse to accept. Being capable of harm is not evil, it is necessary. A mother bear is capable of ripping a threat apart, and that capacity is what keeps her cubs safe. A kind person who can also be ruthless when necessary is far more valuable than a kind person who can only be kind, because kindness without strength just enables dysfunction. This is the first truth you need to integrate. You are not becoming a worse person by developing your capacity for strength. You are becoming a complete person, and complete people are dangerous to those who profit from your weakness. Now let me show you what happens when an empath finally stops suppressing the parts of themselves they were taught to hide. Jung called this process shadow integration, and it is the most important psychological work you will ever do. Your shadow is not the monster hiding in your unconscious. Your shadow is every quality you were told was unacceptable. Your anger, your selfishness, your capacity to say no, your willingness to walk away, your ability to see manipulation and refuse to play along. For years, you denied these parts of yourself. When you felt angry, you told yourself you were overreacting. When you wanted to say no, you forced yourself to say yes. When you sensed someone was lying, you talked yourself out of your own perception. You did this because you were taught that good people do not feel anger, do not have boundaries, do not question others. But suppressing your shadow did not make it disappear. It just made it unconscious. And unconscious shadows are far more dangerous than integrated ones. When you deny your anger, it leaks out as passive aggression. When you refuse to set boundaries, resentment builds until you explode. When you ignore your intuition about dangerous people, you end up in toxic relationships that destroy you slowly. Shadow integration means bringing all these denied parts into consciousness. It means acknowledging that you have the capacity for every human quality, including the ones you were taught to fear. Jung observed that people who integrate their shadow do not become evil. They become whole. They recognize that every human contains light and darkness, and the goal is not to eliminate darkness, but to choose consciously which aspects of yourself you express in any given moment. But shadow integration does not happen gradually. It happens in one explosive moment that Jung documented across dozens of cases. He called it the snap, and it is the catalyst that forces this transformation, whether you are ready or not. The snap happens when betrayal becomes so obvious that you cannot ignore it anymore. Maybe you discovered infidelity. Maybe you uncovered financial betrayal. Maybe you finally saw through years of emotional manipulation. Whatever it is, the evidence is undeniable. Most people expect empaths to fall apart during this moment. Manipulators certainly expect it. They are prepared for tears, for screaming, for emotional chaos. What they are not prepared for is what actually happens. The empath becomes calm, unnaturally calm. Something fundamental shifts in their eyes. They stop trying to fix things. They stop explaining themselves. They stop caring what anyone thinks. This is not a breakdown. This is a breakthrough. Jung described this moment as terrifying to witness. The person sitting across from him was no longer the confused, self-doubting patient who walked in. Empaths aren't broken. They're alchemists in progress. The Alchemist's Path gives you drills, Jung-based boundaries, and 3 exclusive chapter videos to turn overwhelm into clarity. By Surreal Mind, 236-page downloadable ebook, in stock. Begin now at thesurrealmind.com. This was someone who had suddenly gained access to years of suppressed clarity. Someone who knew exactly what had been done to them and was no longer willing to pretend otherwise. Here is what makes this moment so powerful. Empaths do not just feel emotions deeply. They process emotional information with devastating accuracy. Their brains are wired for pattern recognition in human behavior. They can read micro-expressions, sense hidden agendas, detect lies before the liar finishes speaking. For years, they ignored this ability because people called them paranoid or too sensitive. But the snap changes everything. Suddenly, they trust their perceptions completely. They stop second-guessing themselves. They stop accepting other people's version of reality when it contradicts what they know to be true. And when an empath finally trusts their own mind, they become absolutely unstoppable. Consider a case profile that illustrates this pattern. An empath might spend years in a relationship absorbing blame for every problem. They are told they are too sensitive when they point out inconsistencies. They are called crazy when they question suspicious behavior. Over time, they learn to doubt their own perceptions. But all along, their unconscious mind is recording everything. Every time their partner's story does not add up. Every micro-expression that contradicts their words. The empath is not imagining things. They are seeing things. They are just not trusting what they see yet. Then comes the moment of undeniable proof. And in that moment, years of suppressed perception flood into consciousness at once. The empath realizes they knew all along. They saw every red flag. They felt every lie. They were right about everything. This realization does not make them angry in the way most people expect. It makes them clear, crystal clear. And clarity is far more dangerous than rage. Now let me show you the specific abilities that emerge when an empath integrates their shadow and learns to trust their perception. Jung documented these across multiple cases, and they appear with remarkable consistency. These are your new superpowers, and understanding them will change how you see yourself forever. The first superpower is lie detection. You can now see through deception instantly. When someone's words do not match their energy, you notice immediately. When someone apologizes without meaning it, you feel it in your bones. When someone plays victim while manipulating the narrative, you recognize the game before they finish their first sentence. This ability is not magic. It is pattern recognition, combined with trust in your own perception. Before the snap, you saw the same inconsistencies, but talked yourself out of believing them. You gave people the benefit of the doubt, even when doubt was the only logical response. You accepted explanations that made no sense because you wanted to believe the best in people. Not anymore. Now when someone smiles while their eyes stay cold, you do not ignore it. When someone's story changes slightly with each telling, you notice. When someone deflects instead of answering a direct question, you see the evasion clearly. You are not paranoid. You are aware. And awareness makes you very difficult to manipulate. The second superpower is strategic silence. You no longer fill every uncomfortable pause with explanations and apologies. You have learned that silence is a weapon more powerful than words. When someone lies to you, you do not argue. You simply watch. You let them keep talking. You give them enough rope to hang themselves with their own contradictions. Strategic silence does something fascinating to manipulators. It makes them nervous. They are used to people who react emotionally, who defend themselves, who can be drawn into arguments where the truth gets buried under drama. But when you stay silent, just observing, they do not know what to do. They start over-explaining. They add unnecessary details. They reveal things they never intended to reveal. Jung noted that patients who mastered strategic silence reported feeling powerful for the first time in their lives. They were no longer dancing to anyone else's tune. They were no longer rushing to smooth things over or make others comfortable. They were simply present, aware, and completely in control of their own responses. The third superpower might be the most powerful of all. Jung called it the mirror effect. When you stop absorbing other people's shadows and start reflecting them back, something shifts in how people experience your presence. You do not have to say anything. You do not have to do anything. Your mere existence becomes uncomfortable for fake people. This happens because you are no longer unconsciously agreeing to ignore what you see. Before integration, you would sense someone's inauthenticity, but pretend not to notice. You would feel their manipulation, but act as if everything was fine. You were participating in a collective agreement to ignore certain truths. But now you have withdrawn from that agreement. You are not judging anyone. You are not trying to expose anyone. You are simply seeing clearly and refusing to unsee. And that clarity radiates from you like light. People who are living in denial or deception feel exposed in your presence, even when you say nothing. They feel like you can see through them, because you can. They feel uncomfortable, and they cannot explain why. Jung documented how awakened empaths would walk into a room and immediately sense who was authentic and who was performing. The authentic people felt drawn to them. The fake people felt threatened and often became hostile without provocation. This was not the empath doing anything wrong. This was simply the natural response of people who cannot tolerate being truly seen. Let me give you a narrative illustration of how this looks in practice. Imagine an empath who has integrated their shadow attending a family gathering. Before integration, they would have smiled through passive-aggressive comments and left feeling drained. But now, something is different. When a family member makes a cutting remark disguised as a joke, the empath does not laugh. They simply hold eye contact for a moment, then calmly change the subject. The family member feels uncomfortable. When another relative tries to dump their problems expecting free therapy, the empath says, "That sounds difficult. I hope you find a solution." No offer to fix it, just acknowledgement and boundary. Throughout the evening, the empath is not doing anything aggressive. They are simply present and boundaried. This alone disrupts everything. Some family members feel relieved. Others feel threatened and may accuse the empath of being cold. Both responses reveal truth about who these people really are. This is the power of the mirror effect. You do not have to call anyone out. You do not have to explain yourself. You do not have to justify your boundaries. You simply exist authentically, and that authenticity forces everyone around you to confront whether they are living authentically or not. Now we come to the most important moment in your transformation. This is where everything you have integrated must crystallize into absolute clarity. Jung called this the moment of psychological invincibility, and it represents the peak of your evolution from victim to sovereign being. Psychological invincibility does not mean nothing can hurt you. It means you no longer need anyone's approval to know your worth. It means you trust yourself more than you trust anyone else's opinion of you. It means you can lose relationships, jobs, and social standing without losing yourself. Think about how much of your life was controlled by the need for approval. You stayed in bad relationships because you feared being alone. You tolerated disrespect because you needed acceptance. Every decision was filtered through what others would think. But psychological invincibility means that filter is gone. You make decisions based on what serves your highest good, not what keeps others comfortable. Here is what this looks like in real terms. You stop explaining your boundaries. You stop defending your decisions. You stop trying to make people understand why you are choosing yourself. You simply choose yourself, over and over, in every situation where you used to choose others, at your own expense. When someone accuses you of changing, you do not argue. When someone tries to guilt you into old patterns, you feel nothing. When someone threatens to leave if you do not go back to being who you were, you help them pack. This is not cruelty. This is clarity. The most beautiful part of psychological invincibility is that it does not make you cold. It makes you free to love without losing yourself. This is the resolution that Jung documented across every successful case. The dangerous empath is not someone who stops caring. The dangerous empath is someone who cares deeply, but has learned to protect that care like the precious resource it is. Let me show you what this actually means in practice. True love requires boundaries. Love without boundaries is not love, it is codependence. Real love says, I care about you deeply, and I also care about myself. I want to support you, and I also require reciprocity. Before integration, you thought love meant endless sacrifice. You confused self-destruction with devotion. But integrated love is different. It is fierce and protective. It demands that both people show up honestly. It refuses to enable dysfunction. It walks away from anyone who confuses your kindness with weakness. Jung noted that awakened empaths often lost relationships during this phase, but the relationships they lost were always ones that required their self-betrayal to function. Good people respected their boundaries and stayed. Toxic people violated their boundaries and left. Here is what you need to understand completely. You are not responsible for other people's growth or healing. You are not required to stay in painful situations hoping they will eventually change. You are not obligated to explain yourself to people who refuse to truly hear you. You are not selfish for choosing peace over constant chaos. You are not cold for protecting your precious energy. You are not wrong for trusting yourself over others. This is love with boundaries. This is compassion with self-protection. This is kindness with strength. And it is the highest form of love because it honors both people in the relationship. It says your well-being matters, and so does mine. Your feelings are valid, and so are mine. You deserve respect, and so do I. This is equality. This is health. This is what love is supposed to look like. Now let me tell you the conclusion that ties everything together. You started this journey as someone who absorbed everyone's pain and called it empathy. You were kind, sensitive, and completely unprotected. People took advantage of your openness. They mistook your softness for weakness. They thought you would tolerate anything because you always had. But something shifted. Maybe it was betrayal. Maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe it was just time. Whatever it was, it forced you to integrate the parts of yourself you had been suppressing. Your anger, your boundaries, your capacity to see clearly and act accordingly. You went through the snap and everything changed. You developed superpowers that were always there but never activated. Lie detection that lets you see through manipulation instantly. Strategic silence that gives you power without words. The mirror effect that makes your presence itself uncomfortable for fake people. And finally, psychological invincibility that frees you from the prison of needing approval. This transformation did not make you cruel. It made you complete. You still feel deeply. You still care about people. You still want to help and heal and love. But now you do it from a place of strength instead of depletion. You give to people who deserve your gifts. You protect yourself from people who would abuse them. You love fiercely but refuse to be destroyed by that love. This is what Jung meant when he called you dangerous. Not dangerous to good people. Not dangerous to healthy relationships. Not dangerous to genuine connection. Dangerous to manipulation. Dangerous to exploitation. Dangerous to anyone who needs you weak to feel powerful. You are dangerous because you can no longer be controlled through guilt, fear, or the promise of approval. And here is the most important part. This dangerous version of you is not something you became. It is who you were all along, underneath all the conditioning that taught you to make yourself small. You are not losing yourself. You are finding yourself. You are not becoming hard. You are becoming whole. If you made it this far, you recognize yourself in this journey. You have felt the shift happening inside you. You have noticed yourself caring less about what others think and more about what serves your peace. You have started setting boundaries that feel foreign, but necessary. You have begun trusting your perceptions even when others call you crazy. You are transforming right now, and it is about time. The world does not need more people who shrink themselves to make others comfortable. The world needs empaths who know their worth and refuse to settle for less than they deserve. They become exactly what the world needs. Powerful enough to protect themselves, wise enough not to abuse that power, and free enough to finally live authentically without apology. In The Alchemist's Path, perception training for empaths, you'll turn overwhelm into wisdom with practical drills, Jung-inspired boundaries, and step-by-step perception training. This guide includes 3 exclusive chapter videos to deepen each lesson. Written by Surreal Mind, 236 pages, beautifully designed 8.5 by 11 downloadable ebook, in stock now. Start your training today. Feel deeply while thinking clearly. Get The Alchemist's Path at thesurrealmind.com. In The Alchemist's Path, perception training for empaths, you'll turn overwhelm into wisdom with practical drills, Jung-inspired boundaries, and step-by-step perception training. This guide includes 3 exclusive chapter videos to deepen each lesson. Written by Surreal Mind, 236 pages, beautifully designed 8.5 by 11 downloadable ebook, in stock now. Start your training today. Feel deeply while thinking clearly. Get The Alchemist's Path at thesurrealmind.com.